Hey guys.
Hi.
Oh my god. It's Ronan, Warlord Magni now. Thanks for coming to the next installment on my Newb to Warlord series. It's been a minute since I've done one of these, but today we're going to talk about tournament prep and strategy. So, really, the point of this is kind of the mental preparation um, ahead of time at different time points throughout, like ahead of the tournament and throughout the tournament, to try to optimize your chances of winning. And this is all because, like, I think once you get to a high enough level, it's no longer a skill problem; it becomes a mental problem. So this is the mental planning for the tournament. Okay. So I'm gonna walk through like pre-tournament, like walk you through a timeline at different stages ahead of the tournament timeline, and then talk about individual tournaments themselves and planning through that process. So first off, right, like before the tournament, I would personally mentally begin preparing for tournaments very far out, anywhere between 1 to 3 months before a tournament starts. Um, and this is, I am looking for the tournaments on Kingdom pages, on Discords, right? Like wherever tournaments are being announced, I am scouting those out. I'm figuring out which ones I want to go to, which ones I can go to, stuff like that. At this point, the most crucial part in terms of planning is understanding the rules, right? Because then from there, you can kind of begin to tailor your preparation plans, your training regiments, to sort of mock those tournament environments. So, right, like understanding the format. Is it traditional pits to brackets? Is it Swiss cheese to brackets? Is it pure brackets? Is it single elimination brackets, double elimination brackets? Is it a pure Ironman? Right? All of those different types of tournaments are going to matter in the way that you prepare for the tournament and what the win conditions are. Additionally, thinking about the categories, right? Is it single, or is it 4 categories, 5 categories, 6 categories? For anybody that runs 6 category tournaments, please stop hating the tournament participants because it really sucks. But right, like the traditional categories is single, Florentine, sword and board, and open. But now Great Sword is starting to become very, very common because of the new changes within the rules. I personally am running Great Sword categories for the 5 tournaments that I'm running for KOP this reign, because I think it's a legitimate category that should be developed more within Amtgard. But right, think about the categories, think about what your weaknesses are, where you need to sort of prioritize and train. Going back to the format, what type of pools is there, or are there even pools? Right, the way that you push, or like the number of fights that you're going to have to fight in a Swiss cheese pools versus traditional pits is going to be very different. In Swiss cheese, right, you're going to get divvied up equally into like 8 or 16 different pools, and out of however many participants there are. So, like, say there's the top 8 are going to be seeded from each Swiss cheese pit or pool, and there's 16 participants in each pit, right? So then you would only have one, the best winner in that pit, or from that pit going into the brackets. And so you would only have 16 fights per category, whereas in comparison to a traditional bear pit sort of pits to bracket style, you're looking at, I don't know, probably 50 to 100 fights for a 15-minute pits to pit section. So you're talking about almost a 4 to 5 times difference. And so that's going to wear on your endurance very, very differently. What is the length of the pools section? And what is the size of the brackets? Are they only doing the top 8, top 16? Right? Those sort of things matter. This is all about understanding the tournament itself. And then finally, what are like the point breakdowns Is it going to be like 10, 5, 3, 1 for first to 4, or is it going to be 4, 3, 2, 1? The importance of getting first is going to be very different between those two different point distributions, right? In the 10, if first place gets 10 points and then second place gets 4 points, you highly prioritize, you have to prioritize getting first. Whereas if you go from a point distribution of 4, 3, 2, 1, where 4 gets, or first gets 4 points, second gets 3 points, so on and so forth, you actually have to be concerned more about being consistent, right? Because two second places is better than a first place, right? And so on and so forth. So again, how crucial is it to get first? And that will play very significantly into the day of the tournament. And then additionally, thinking about any miscellaneous rules within the tournament, right? What are the ring boundaries? Are they soft boundaries? Are they hard boundaries? Do you get a reset? Single elimination versus double elimination. All of these sort of little nuanced details matter, especially if you're trying to go for Warlord, because most kingdoms only run 4 tournaments a reign every 6 months. And if you're not traveling, you get 4 shots, right? And that's not really a lot. And especially if you're in a very competitive kingdom where there's other warlords fighting, or if there's other up-and-comers that are really fighting for Warlord, right? You're all having to clamor over each other to get to the top. So 4 chances every 6 months is really not a lot. Additionally, thinking about who is probably going to go to the tournament. So who are your major competitions going to be? What are their fighting styles? What sort of strategies do they use? For example, like if here in Polaris we have Warlord Sir Shepard, he's a lefty boardman. So if I know Shepard's going to be in the tournament, I'm going to want to prioritize sort of like training my left fighting righty v lefty, right? But if I don't have to worry about fighting a lefty, then it's not something I have to think about. It doesn't have to take up brain space in my training regimen. Additionally, on top of this, right, understanding your pain points and your strengths and weaknesses, because if you know what you do well, right, you continue to keep those aspects strong. But when you are 1 to 3 months out, that's enough time for you to begin to strengthen those weak points, right? So if I'm, for example, with Sir Shepard, if I don't feel very comfortable fighting lefties, and I know Shepard's going to be at that tournament, I am going to seek out fighting lefties, right? So I can get more reps and get more comfortable and train better with that. Maybe I'll even go travel to Shepherd's Park if I have the ability to get more reps and sort of like try to get a beat on the way Shepard fights. Okay. And then from that, this is where you kind of prioritize your training, what really matters, right? Is if the pits is where you really lack, right? Like prioritize your endurance, strengthen your endurance, do a lot of ditching, a lot of 1v1 spars at park, try to do some long distance running to increase your cardio, stuff like that. Or in sort of other situations, if you know there's a great sword category and you're not very good at great, practice great sword. Even a little bit will go a long way. And then additionally on top of that, like think about travel plans. Make sure that you can get to the tournament on time. You can get the time off. You can like have time to recover after the tournament, stuff like that. If the tournament is 6 hours away and you still want to go to it, like try to get there the Friday night before, so you have time to be well rested and stuff like that. I don't suggest anybody just winging it and be like, oh, well, I can do this, so I'm just going to like throw my hat in and travel 6 hours and see what happens. No. Also, me personally, I found having a buddy getting a buddy to go with me. In my climb up to Warlord, I had my buddy Monkey Man as well as my buddy Gra out in Crystal Groves. They came with me to each of my tournaments, or a lot of my tournaments within Crystal Groves, and they were kind of like the guys that I trained with every day. So they would help me warm up at the tournament itself. And then, we would carpool and talk and, whatever. But then I used it sort of as like a support system on top of that. Again, right, like this is a very stressful sort of thing, trying to win tournaments, at least for me personally. Some people find it really fun, and that's great. But I found having a buddy help me like distribute that load. They were the person that I confided in of like, oh, dude, this is really stressful, yeah, and stuff like that. So, maybe a buddy is helpful. Okay, so that's like 1 to 3 months out, right? And then I would say that's kind of all the same. Again, getting used to the rules, understanding the rules, thinking about your pain points, and try to build a training plan to improve what you're lacking in, and then continue to supplement what you're already strong in. Now, in the final preparation, right, this is like the final weeks, maybe the last month before the tournament, I would really prioritize getting like the final adjustments in your fighting, right? Like at this point, there is no point in trying to learn big new fancy shots, learning new setups, stuff like that. I would say this is where you are trying to fine tune whatever you've been working on of like, oh, maybe it's this dark side, or it's this dark money that I want to work on. I need to get that like super crisp, or, I need to get this like backspin off really well. Get that fundamentally down in like my muscle memory. I would say this is really where those final weeks come into play. Again, make sure your equipment is good. It is never a good time to go to a tournament and it's like, I have 2 very nearly completely blown out swords, and these are the only 2 swords that I have. Make sure you have equipment. I mean, I know a lot of the warlords in Polaris, as well as like across the country, they have tournament sticks that they only use at tournaments. I personally don't do that because I'm lazy and I blow through swords so fast. So it's just like my tournament sticks are the same sticks that I fight with every single day. And for me personally, that's more of like a consistency thing, because then I don't have to worry about like, oh, well, this sword is like a ½ ounce lighter. So if somebody hits me just a little bit harder, it's going to pull the sword out of the way more. I don't have to worry about like those minute differences. Okay. Also, this is really the time in the final weeks to focus on your mental preparation. I would say this is where you really want to take the time to visualize the tournament. Visualize going there, right? Walking up to the tournament, preparing, getting the warm-ups, fighting in each category, thinking about the fights, right, themselves, as well as the course of the tournament. Of like, okay, we're going to go into singles, and then after singles, we're going to go straight into flow, and it's pits to pits to pits to pits. We do all the pits, and then we do all the brackets, right? So, like, that's where I'm mentally preparing myself and visualizing the 2-hour-long endurance race, and then the mentally taxing chess game that is brackets, right? Mentally preparing for all of that. And then after that, right, you're in kind of the final stretch of the last week. This is where I would say you should really prioritize your wellness. Don't push too hard in the last week. If it's like, if you normally have a fighter practice on, say, Wednesdays, and you have a tournament on Saturday, I would say don't go to the fighter practice, because maybe the odds of you pulling a tendon or something in your elbow is pretty small, but there's still the chance. And you don't want to have these 3 months of preparation up to this tournament, and then the 2 days before your elbow's blown out, and then you can't actually go to the tournament, which has happened to people, and it really sucks. And I know people that have continued to fight in the tournament, and they've hurt themselves more, and they've delayed their chances of getting Warlord instead of just taking the L and taking the break for that one tournament. Yeah, sure, it sucks, and you're going to have to wait another 2 to 3 months, but it's better than hurting yourself and delaying your chances of getting Warlord for another 1 or 2 years. So when I say like prioritize wellness, like try to avoid injuries, don't fight as much, make sure you get plenty of sleep, eat the right things, right? Be healthy, drink water, blah, 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 all that stuff. I would also say, like, in the preparation to tournament fighting in general, you should be prioritizing your health. But again, like in the final week, you're just trying not to hurt yourself. And then finally, there is the tournament day, right? The day of the tournament. This is kind of this is where everything comes to a head. And I remember when I would go on my climb, when I was on my climb, like the night before a tournament, I would often not be able to sleep. I would only be able to sleep like 2 to 6 hours, and because of the nerves of just like I'm so anxious, like a lot of things just are coming together, and it's a very stressful time. But right, this is where you try to like prioritize your wellness. But on the day of the tourney, I highly, highly recommend get to site early. I personally try to get to the tournament an hour before even signups start. Because then when you're at signups, right, everybody's coming in, they're signing up, but I'm already warmed up by the time the tournament starts. I always hate going into the first pits cold, right? And a lot of people do this, and you're not really going to be able to perform the best. And so for me personally, again, this is all about trying to optimize your chances of winning. So warm up beforehand and get there early so you can warm up, so you can also scout who's there, see who's actually signing up. Oh, Shepard's going to be here, or Shepard shows up. Sword and Border is going to be a hard fucking time for me because I'm not good righty v lefty or whatever, right? Or yes, all of my preparation and planning has paid off because of this moment. Again, right, so I said scouting. Also think about, depending on if, say, like a traveling warlord shows up to the tournament that you did not plan for at all, right? Think about contingency plans, scout them out, see how they fight. You see they're like super, super fast. Try to think about in your head, what are your contingency plans? How are you going to counteract that fight, and strategize how you're going to like optimize your chances of winning, either in the pits as well as in the brackets. And then finally, again, warm up. Don't go at 100% when you're warming up. I would say try to only get up to like 60 to 80%. And when I say 80%, you're only at 80% right before you go into the pits. So you are like at steady state and ready to go and ready to grind. Okay. And so now, right, that's the start of the day, and then you have the final tournament itself. And so if you're already warmed up and ready to go and pit start, you don't have to worry about, potentially hurting yourself in the tournament. I mean, Magnus here has hurt himself multiple times in KOP tournaments, and he's had to leave early because he's hurt himself or re-injured himself. Sorry, not really a call out, Magnus, but I'm just using you as an example. Anyway, so you get into the pits section. Typically, this is where in pits themselves, I say don't like cut the fancy shit. Use your bread and butter shots. Simple, simple, simple. This is where you got to grind. I thought it was just you guys. I'm sorry. You look like you're gonna leave. Right. This is a high throughput part of the tournament. You need to get your wins. You need to rack them up so you can try to get your first seed or whatever you want. Now, really quick, I should have pointed this out in the beginning of the or earlier in the workshop session, whatever, is if it's like a double elimination bracket, I would personally highly recommend getting the first seed. Because at the first seed, you have the best chances of winning, because you are Now, granted, this is assuming whoever is running the tournament actually knows how to run the tournament properly. But assuming everybody does, the first seed should have the best chances of making it all the way to the finals. Okay. And then if you lose, so if you're the first seed in a double elimination bracket, you actually have to fight the lowest. Well, assuming everybody actually places in the seeds where they're supposed to and everything, blah, blah, blah. This gets into like a bunch of bracket theory and stuff. But ideally, you fight the lowest number of fights in the winners brackets, because if you ever drop into the losers bracket, you have to fight like double the number of fights. And me personally, I don't want to fight all the extra fights, so trying to maximize your seed position is beneficial. Okay, anyway, so when you're in pits, right, cut the fancy shit, bread and butter shots. You know, everybody has like their 6 common shots, whatever. Stick to those 4 to 6 to 10 shots. You don't. This isn't where you're busting out your fancy spins and the Sex Panther shot and what. It's fine. It's a story for another day. Or like all of this stuff, right? Just keep it simple and to the point. Additionally, where was I at? You want to hold on to the pit as best as you can, because the time that you're not in the pit, this is actually really important. The more time that you're in the pit, that is time that your opponents, your competitors, are not able to rack up fights. That's really important, right? So if I know I have to fight for first seed, and say Magnus is my next best competition and there's only one pit, whatever, or maybe there's another pit and Magnus isn't in there, or maybe Magnus is in there, I'm going to let Magnus stay or try to hold my pit as much as possible to deprive the rest of my fighters, my competition, from actually being able to get more kills. So then you are artificially increasing your seed position. And again, like, do as best as you can. If you're like at the yeah, so try to like draw the pits out, and try not to Simo out, because Simos and pits is actually effectively a loss. You're not giving somebody else a point typically, but you are losing time in the pit. Additionally, if you're not really concerned about getting the first seed, I would say if it's a 15-minute pit and you have stayed in that pit for 10 minutes, or you definitely have like over 20 to 30 kills, go sit down. There's no need for you to continue to burn yourself out, because all you have to really care about is seeding, right? So don't burn yourself out and take the extra 5-10 minute breather between the pits to gear up for the next category. Okay, so now, right, you run through all the pits, and you're about to go into brackets. Brackets, again, like I kind of said it earlier, but brackets is really the chess game of the tournament itself, right? This is where it's typically best 2 out of 3s, best 3 out of 5. I think best 2 out of 3 is the most common because it's faster, and I think it's still like adequate to give enough time for the 2 fighters to sort of have a conversation together. 3 out of 5 is a much longer conversation, and so there's more dynamic like interplay or more room for it. But I think you can still get to the same point in best 2 out of 3. Anyway, right, so when the brackets get announced and you see your bracket gets called and you go into the pit, immediately start planning your fight out of like, okay, right, think about I would recommend going to my other videos on like combat assessment, combat computer, those sort of like mental game sort of things. Go check those videos out for like planning the fight out itself. But thinking about what is your opponent's like main set of shots? Are they really good at range control? Are they really good at like, do they have like a really dirty dark side, or like a super precise money shot, or whatever? Or are they incredibly good at throwing smoke, like body feints and fakes or whatever? Or do they like to fight really close and you don't like to fight close? Think about those contingencies. Yes, I'm looking at you. It's Sean, by the way, the pill. But right, think about those sort of things as you're walking into the pit. As the pit, you line up, you tap swords, you bow, whatever. Personally, when you're in the pits, especially, or the brackets, sorry, and it's the best 2 out of 3, getting the first kill is super crucial, in my opinion. Because when you are 1-0, if you get one more kill, you win the bracket. You win that fight, and you move on, right? But if you lose, you still have room for error, right? Because there's another fight after that. Does that make sense? Right? So me personally, if I am 0-1, I am having to be very conscientious and hyper-focused to make sure that I get that next kill, and not to like fall into any traps that my opponent is setting up. This becomes a little bit different when it's 3 out of 5. First kill is still pretty nice because you still get cushion room, but the difference is not as large. Additionally, the like talking about buffer rooms and planning this out. If say you're fighting single sword and your right arm gets tagged, you're a right-handed fighter, so now I'm left-handed, and I know I'm like dog shit with my left hand. Okay, what I would advise is to go for the Simo, because Simos and brackets don't matter. That's a full reset, right? So I would personally, when I'm down a limb or whatever, and I am in a oh shit situation, I'm going to throw very, very high probability shot that I'm going to land or plan for this, but I know I'm going to get hit, right? Like, I'm going to expose the shit out of my back, right? Like, if I'm righty v lefty, Sean, actually come here really fast. Okay, so right-handed, right? And I'm left-handed. Okay, right? We have swords, and we're here, right? So instead of like trying to play this like hand match game, and I'm gonna try to tag the arm or whatever, what I'm actually or tag the arm and then like try to scrape out a win. No, it's fine. I don't need it. And try to scrape out a win. It's fine. God damn it. Okay, fuck it. All right. So I'm armed, right? And instead of trying to like scrape out, something on the arm snipes, what I'm actually going to do is come in real deep, come in really exposed. I'm going to give him my back. Fuck it. Oh, I'm armed. Oh no, we reset. So now we go back here, and I have the best case scenario that I can win this fight again. That's kind of it. That's why I didn't really need the swords. You can go sit down now. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
So again, right, like, use your Simos very strategically, especially if you're in a oh shit situation. Simo it out, reset it. Assessing the fights as they go, and adjusting as the fights continue, right? Like, especially, this is sort of the conversation that I was alluding to in the best 2 out of 3s, best 3 out of 5s, right? If I see my opponent, jumping really close in A range, and we're sword and board, I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I can't get over, they're taller than me, whatever, right? If they like to use their height and aggression to like outpower me, I need to adjust to that style, to whatever they're playing, that chess move and figure out a counter, right? So if somebody is like coming in close, I'm going to like back out, probably back out, off to the side, offline, and snipe to try to like get their arm, get their leg. What DeVry did to me in Northern Lights is he realized that I'm a very highly mobile fighter, and the way that he maximized his chances of winning in the bracket fights is he would leg me, and so then he took all of my mobility away, especially in sword and board, so I couldn't like out footwork him, and then he controlled the fight because he was a more technical fighter than me, and he probably still is. But right, that's an adjustment in that regard. So if I know DeVry is always going to try to leg me, that's something I'm going to be hyper aware about, and trying to do stutter steps to get him to throw low so I can block the sword out and then like tag the arm or something, right? Or like hip scoop or whatever. One thing that you kind of you could do as well is like wear your opponents out, especially if you know that they have limited gas in the tank and you have better endurance. You see they like really wore themselves out in the pits. Use that to your advantage. Make them throw a lot more, or aggress and like be in their face and get them on the worried side. Some stuff like that. But also don't gas yourself out, because if you gas yourself out, then you just kind of like played your own trap card. When you lose, make sure you keep your cool. It's very easy to, when you go on a loss, especially in the brackets, say at the start of the tournament, you lose and you get in this very negative headspace, and then you just like spiral down, and then you fight like really, really garbage in the future brackets. And so then you can't you're not actually fighting at your best. So if you lose a brackets, and it's double elimination, you still have a chance to sort of save yourself and fight your way back up. If it's single elimination, sucks, kid, but you can still kind of come back in the next brackets, right? So in the next set of brackets for the next category, you just have to fight more focused, more mentally engaged, plan the fights out, so on and so forth, right? But don't get inside your head. There's been multiple tournament fighters that I've seen, both at the Warlord level as well as like up and comers, that have gotten inside of their heads and ended up losing the tournament because of one loss in a category. So there's always the next chance. So just try not to get in your head. And then the last thing is I would recommend is kind of tally the points up as you go. Track your wins. Always go talk to the Reeve runner, or the tournament runner, right? If you get, this is kind of where I was talking about in the far out planning in the 1 to 3 months of knowing what the point breakdowns are. You should be able to plan ahead and figure out okay, I need at least 3 wins, or 3 firsts, or 2 firsts and a second, or okay, we are now in open category, and that's the 4th category out of 5. Magnus took first in single sword. I took first in Florentine, and Magnus took first in sword and board, right? So Magnus has 2 firsts. I have 1 first. That means an open to optimize my chances of getting first in great, say it's there, or to even win the tournament, or at worst tie, I guess. I have to get first in open, right? Or if you've won 3 out of the 5 categories, or if you've gotten first in 3 out of the 5 categories, the other 2 brackets, they're kind of lulls. You could just be dog shit for the rest of the for the tournament because you still won technically. There's no way that anybody can beat you potentially, right? Just stuff like that. Do the points in your head, and this is often where I found the buddy to be very helpful because I can be in the mental space of winning, and then my buddy is actually tracking the points for me. But yeah, that's kind of everything that I have for tournaments. I think, overall, try to have a positive attitude within the tournaments. Of course, fight cleanly, have good honor and everything like that. But always try to keep a positive attitude and try to plan ahead. And I personally think that the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. But hopefully you guys found this helpful and everybody online. So that's all I have. And I guess I'll see you on my next installment in my Newb to Warlord. Thanks, guys. You bitch.